So Nijil, thank you so much for joining us in this Fire Up series. It's a series of startup interviews we are doing in the times of COVID and lockdown,
Right.
uh, looking at different facets topically relevant right now. Of course, we're looking at some aspects that will help startups manage or deal with things in the lockdown and the slowdown period, including things like cash flow management, compliance, and like whatever. And also looking at specifically opportunities that startups are tapping into. And looking at like generally things that will help during such times in terms of because it's an opportunity to innovate as well.
Yes.
So that's why that's what this Find Up series is. So
Okay.
Nijil, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. Pleasure.
So we'll spend a little bit of time looking at your current startup and the products, and then look at specifically the topic, which is like how to leverage research
Sure.
for innovating for the market, innovating,
Absolutely.
taking innovation to the markets.
Sure.
So let's get started. Why don't you just quickly, in a couple of minutes, give the journey of Mashinga. How did you get the idea? How did it start? And like the whole journey. Tell.
Sure, absolutely. So, Mashinga started actually way back in 2013-14. Back then, we were doing a hardware product. We were doing Microsoft Surface Table, something similar to that. It was a multi-user engagement device. Then eventually, we realized that was not something that would scale, so we had to pivot. We eventually started building a meeting assistant, primarily for enterprise to capture meetings, conversations, and then generate automated minutes out of it. Which eventually led us to build our own speech engine because of the issues that we faced with the current solutions that were provided in the market. That is where we started getting associated with IT, with product labs, research labs, which is run by the speech research lab, which is run by Dr. Anil Kumar. Eventually, we build our own speech to text platform, which is what our current solution is. So we are a speech platform provider for enterprise, which provides domain-adapted, privacy-enabled solutions to integrate or build products which solves a voice-related problems. That's where we are right now.
So that's good. Now, so the products. How did the whole idea of the product come about?
Sure. So this was a problem that we faced when we actually started selling our meeting solution. So we were using Google speech engine to actually generate the meeting minutes. And then we went to a couple of enterprise customers like Tech Mahindra, Accenture. The feedback that we got was, hey, your solution is good, but as long as you are using a solution like Google in the backend, our data goes to them. Right. And this was a problem or a feedback that was resonated across enterprises. So privacy was a primary concern. Right. Second was the flexibility of the engine itself. Right. So if I'm using a Google engine or a Microsoft engine, I just have to be happy with whatever accuracy or the constraint that they provide. Even if I have additional data that I could leverage, there was no way I could train with it or adapt to that environment for that matter. And the accuracy was always a general conversational level accuracy, and I couldn't adapt to, let's say, specific conversations in financial, insurance, or healthcare. Right. So, and that was a second thing, and third was a scalability factor. Right. So, a couple of the enterprises that we talked with have audio processing requirements in the scale of 100,000 hours per month. Which if I use an existing engine, it comes to millions of dollars just in cloud computing bills. Right. So there was no control on our end in terms of how much computing is used, how can we cut down on the infrastructure cost and all those things. So these three things combined led us to believe that, hey, the only way we can sell our current meeting solution was if we own the speech pipeline, where we have better control on how the decoding works, how the accuracy can be improved over time with the data that is coming in, because ultimately data is a new oil, and we were pretty much pipelining all that back to the big players. Right? And we were not holding any sort of IP or the data that is coming into our end or leveraging anything out of it. So this was the whole thought process of, let's go ahead and build a speech platform our own.
So, how was the reception in the market? I mean, like, what are the initial set of solutions that you could address from the product?
Sure. So the biggest problem that we had when we started building the product or solution was we totally underestimated the time involved. Because then this is another reason why a startup usually don't try to solve a speech engine of their own, because there are three main components involved. One is you need to have the right set of engineering skills. you need the right computation, and you need the right set of data, right? And more often than not, a startup don't have all three of it, or at least two of it, right? Because it's money involved, and the data that is required at scale is never with the startup, right? So that is around the time where we got associated with the Triple IT product labs, the speech lab, and we somehow solved the initial part. So the research that Triple IT has in terms of last 20 years, being one of the leading guys in NLP and speech, we were able to short circuit the engineering time involved, because getting hold of a speech expert in India is super hard, right? Hardly like 100 people who actually knows what how to build this. So Triple IT was able to short circuit our time involved in getting the engineering part sorted, so that something that could have taken like 2 to 3 years came down to something like 8 months. Right, the time was something that helped us. The second was the computation part. So obviously you need ton of compute to actually start running the machine learning algorithms, and you never get it right in the first try. You need to keep on running, do multiple trial and errors, which means you have to burn a ton of compute. So initially we were able to leverage the server or GPUs that was there in Triple IT premise, but after a point that was also not enough because of the scale that we ran into, right? For example, to run 10,000 hours of training data, it took us very much like 8 to 9 days on 8 GPUs, right? And you don't really get that kind of compute available to startups, right? So thankfully, around that time, we got access to AWS credits, and also we got associated with Case Western University in the US, where we got our clusters access. So that also cut down our cost in terms of computation. And third was the data. So again, this took us some time to actually collect enough data to become useful to a point, right? So that 10,000 hours, it took us a while, but eventually we solved that also. So right now we are sitting on something like 25,000 hours of raw data, which we eventually use to train our algorithms and make it better. So these were the three components which we leveraged over time. And in terms of time frame, in 2018 is when we started. And by 2019 mid is when we actually had a production quality engine ready. So one flip side of voice is, or something that we faced was, we couldn't sell a half-baked product, right? For example, we tried going to the market with something like 60% accuracy or 70% accuracy. The market feedback was the alternative available solutions already gives us 90, right? Why should we go back to you, right? Yes, there were few use cases where we could leverage in terms of some analytics use cases, but those were like very one-off, right? In the general market, people expectation is, yes, it has to be at least 80 to 90%, right? So it took us a while to actually hit that sweet spot, or you could say production ready spot, which we hit last year somewhere around March, Feb. And post that, we were mostly giving our product back to the enterprise, getting it validated from them, so that eventually they can sign up as a customer.
So now that brings, I mean, like when it comes to accuracy and such, I think that's where probably the value from research comes in. So how did the engagement with research start?
Sure. So if you look at our team like 2 years back, we were from a programming background, but we were not hardcore speech experts, right? Even though we wanted to solve that problem, we were not from that domain. So getting up to speed on our own would have taken like few months to maybe up to a year to be an expert in speech, right? So that is where I think Speech Lab came in and got us fast tracked, you could say, to a point where we could build the product on our own, right? I think that is the primary thing that we leveraged out of product lab or speech processing lab, where they got us sorted with the initial set of things, as in like, hey, these are the tools that you use, these are the kind of approach that you have to do, rather than we hitting at every other door and finding the right door. They help us in directing, hey, this might be the right set of approach that you have to follow, so that you can reduce the time involved in that, or the algorithms that you could use. Also leverage the research students as well, right? As part of the project, where their expertise also could be leveraged. For example, if I as a startup were to go and hire a speech processing expert, that
Huh.
would easily go up to like $50,000 a year, right? Or
Huh.
$100,000, which as a startup we were not able to afford. So thankfully, as part of the Avishkar program, we got access to the speech lab at a subsidized rate that actually helped us in improving or extending our runway plus reducing a time frame to go to market.
So now, so did it? Um Obviously, there are very very specific problems. The engagement research helps address those.
Right.
But did you discover new possibilities as you start working with the speech lab?
Yes. So, yeah, absolutely. So, when we started off, we were only looking at a solution as something that will solve our meeting problem, right? Or uh, meeting minutes problem or meeting assistant problem, right?
Huh.
But once we started building the whole speech platform, what we understood was, hey, this is a platform which can solve multiple solutions, right?
Huh.
That Also we were only looking at English as a go-to language, right? But
Huh.
once we started working in the research lab, we saw that hey, there is ton of research that is happening in Indic languages, right,
Huh.
or regional languages, and no one is leveraging that also, right? Partly
Huh.
there was a data gap, but
Huh.
there were algorithms that is already existing. There was a lot of research that already there, where if
Huh.
we put in the right set of data, we could leverage it.
Huh.
So we expanded our product portfolio, or you could say the vision that we had in front of it.
Huh.
Rather than limiting our whole solution just as a meeting assistant, we have expanded as more of a speech platform, which has
Huh.
multiple components that is getting offered. Along with speech to text, we started building sentiment analyzers or speaker identification engines, which
Huh.
are all complementary solutions, but as a
Huh.
whole suite, which increase the value of the whole offering multiple
Huh.
folds, right?
Huh.
And this happened over time when we started interacting and then identifying that hey, these things exist. What is the best way that we can plug in so that it
Huh.
is useful for the customer, right? So it was a back and forth process. There was market interest as well as research when we try to align it with that
Hmm.
data, right?
Now, now in like times such as now, like in the whole COVID situation, and the whole nation and the world is trying to grapple with it.
Yeah.
Did you find any opportunities that's come up, like where now you, given that you have access to research, did you find opportunities where like you felt like you could quickly get some solutions out, even if you didn't attempt, it's okay. But did you find some opportunities where the research
Absolutely,
collaboration would have
absolutely.
helped?
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned because we are already getting queries. So thankfully, we are in a space which is voice, which is one, it's no touch. Second is we are looking at a lot of automation solutions as well, right?
Hmm.
Especially because of the company's constraint, they have to cut down on human resource, or the people are not able to reach the office spaces, right? There is a
Hmm.
ton of opportunities in terms of automation, right? So one of the things that we are already working on is what we call as one-step automation, where imagine you call up a call center or anything for that matter, and if you are able to get that information from the back end using an
Hmm.
LP plus speech solution without a human in the loop, right? That is a
Huh.
cost saving for them, right? And typically, if you take any sort of call center, 40% of the calls are like this, right? Where I
Huh.
ask them and say, "Hey, I want my account balance," or "When
Huh.
does the plan get expired?" Right? All
Huh.
you have to do is convert that to text, query the backend, get the result, and speak it back.
Huh.
And when I say 40%, if you are getting like 2 million calls a month, 40% is
Huh.
600,000 calls, right? Or
Huh.
800,000 calls. And
Huh.
that itself has a direct effect on your bottom line, right?
Hmm.
And this is scalable across domains, right?
Huh.
This is one use case that has come up very frequently. Second is in terms of voice biometry, right?
Huh.
Especially when you're working remote, people need to authenticate yourself, right?
Hmm.
So we got a query from Middle East where the government wants to provide work from home opportunities, where they want
Hmm.
to validate your account with the voice plus facial, right?
Both you use the biometrics there. Okay. Huh.
Biometrics, right? So
Huh.
they want to authenticate the user not just with the password, right?
Huh.
Partly also they want to make sure that they also do geofencing and everything. So basically for authentication, right? So our speaker identification engine comes into use there, where you already have your voice signed up as part of the system, something like a couple of minutes of audio,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
from that point onwards, whenever you speak, it's identified as a Nijil or Ramesh is speaking.
Hmm.
So, and you hardly require less than 2 seconds audio to
Hmm.
get that signature in place, right?
Huh.
So automation and authentication, these are two main places where we see, a huge amount of adoption compared to
Huh.
earlier. Because earlier there was always human resource available, and we were
Huh.
competing with that.
Huh.
Now it has become it's not an option anymore that you have to automate, right?
Huh.
Uh, Partly because of the huge amount of customer input that is coming in, whatever be the problems, because at least for the last 2-3 months, half of the customer support calls are not addressed, either because they
Huh.
are not able to service it or whatever be the reason. So there is a ton
Huh.
of backlogs, and
Huh.
this is sort of helping in that fashion.
So your SDK, did you have to reimagine the project a little to support some of these use cases, or the configuration you already had is fitting in as is?
So the first one, it's already something that we were offering. The
Huh.
biometry was not something we were offering as an authentication solution, but more as an identification solution inside a conversation.
Huh.
So we were trying to segregate who said what,
Huh.
rather than using it as an authentication mechanism. So now we
Huh.
have to tweak that bit so that it fits as a authentifier, right? You need to have a passphrase along with it, not just, hey, this is Ramesh with 95% accuracy. We want to
Huh.
add like a passphrase along with it and say that, hey, this was said by Ramesh and this was the expected passphrase, something like that. Right?
Huh.
So that was a small tweak, but as a whole underlying product is concerned, we don't have to change a lot for that matter, thankfully.
And and so in general, if you were to say like for a startup to work with research,
Yeah,
uh, what are the challenges that you come across which a startup needs to be aware of? Because like research is at the end of the day research.
sure.
Neither are they industry and engineering groups, nor are they a startup, right? So they bring their value for sure, but they also bring their own constraints in terms of how they think and function. So any challenges that you have come across in these last few years of working with research?
Sure, sure. So something that initially when we started off, what we expected, or something that I see when someone comes to research, is they expect the research lab to build the product for you, right?
Hmm.
And I don't think that would happen.
Yes.
Partly because uh, they don't know your problem, right? They
Yes.
have a set of the way of working is different, and
Yes.
also they cannot support your product once you graduate, or you stop your
Huh.
engagement. So if they build 100% of the product and deliver it to you, you have no idea what is inside. It would be a black box for you.
Huh.
You won't be able to touch it. You won't be able to modify it, right? So
Huh.
you need to come in with your own set of expertise in that problem statement or in that domain, so that you can work along with it rather than dump the whole building
Huh.
process to the product lab.
Huh.
There is the gap that you have between let's say academia versus production, right?
Huh.
So, for example, when we were building, most of the research typically works in a scale of something like 500 hours to 1000 hours to 2000 hours max, because that is
Huh.
what is required to build a paper out of it, and
Huh.
show the initial set of assumptions and training
Huh.
required. But the moment when we jump to, let's say, 10,000 hours of training or 20,000 hours of training, there was no
Huh.
metrics available, right? You don't know what is the kind of parameters that you have to use, or
Hmm.
tweaking that is required. And that is something you have to learn over time, right?
Huh.
So you cannot expect such a expertise already in place, because that was never a need, or that was not a problem that they had to solve for themselves, right?
Hmm.
So you need to anticipate that. And third would be the time involved in it, I would say, because when we started off, we were assuming that okay, in 6 months we'll have everything done, and the next 3 months we'll be going to market.
Hmm.
Because of multiple things, it was not a thing that no one was working on it, but it was that research takes time, right?
Hmm.
There are a lot of unanticipated problems that you might come across, and you have to solve it. So
Huh.
put an ample amount of runway, either in terms of already generated revenue or
Huh.
customer commitments, or in terms of investor money. You need to have that runway in place, so that you don't run
Huh.
out and burn out, right? So anticipating the right sort of time frame. So whatever you assume, double it, I would say, is what would be the
Hmm.
right format. Yeah.
True. I think they're all very good points. I think these are all important to factor in, because at the end of the day, startup might be making commitments to somebody outside, to a company or to somebody else outside.
Yeah.
You need to make sure like the model is well understood and accordingly factor those in. to ensure that the value is delivered. So finally, Nijil, can you suggest a growth hack? I mean, if you have to suggest a growth hack based on your experiences, one growth hack tip to all deep tech startups, especially those that want to work with research, what would your growth hack tip be?
Sure. I would say get the customer first before even thinking about building the product. Who would ideally be that customer who would be ready to work with you through the process, right? So someone who can understand that, hey, this is something that is going to take time. There are some problems that are going to be coming out of it, but at the end of it, if he is getting a takeaway where you are sharing the product free of cost with them or at a subsidized rate with them, but they are also part of the process and they also benefit, that would be a very much helpful use case. More the number of customers, the better. But not a lot also, right? If you are trying to cater with like 10 of them at the same time, that also won't happen. So maybe with a bit of revenue commitment, so that that also helps you survive over time, and getting the right set of investor also who understand.
No, but specifically with research, when working with research, what would your growth hack be? I mean, how can a startup leverage research and then grow their business?
Sure. So
one growth hack tip.
Sure. So the reason why we chose speech text as a problem to go behind is we know that if we were to solve it, it is going to take the same amount or even more for someone else to come in and do the same thing, right? So the competitive advantage that you would have if you solve a research problem or if you go down the research route much higher in terms of the IP, the time involved in someone else to come in and solve the same problem. The threshold is much higher than if you were to build an app or a solution with existing available tools, right?
So your growth hack tip is like if it allows, the problem you chosen allows, working with research is an inherent way of building those barriers.
Yes.
That others cannot that easily do unless they work with some other research team similarly.
Absolutely.
That's a great tip. I think that's a good thing, especially startups that are in such a space.
Yes.
It's always good to work with research so that you can build those barriers.
Yes. And get your IP sorted. You can register it somewhere else, and that definitely helps in bringing in the next set of investors or customers. Why they would go with you compared to an existing solution provider.
So pick the right problem that is relevant to the market for solving, and for that problem, see if your research can fit in nicely. Then there's a market problem in which you've already built some barriers because you're using you're leveraging research.
Yes,
that's a great tip. So Nijil, thank you so much. We've hit our 15-minute time. So thanks for taking the time, and stay safe, and hope some of these opportunities that you talked about pan out. So it also in some form helps your startup grow.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting Mashinga for the conversation as well. It was a great talk, and stay safe as well.
Thank you, Nijil. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.